Okay.
Welcome to a very special edition of the PhinManiacs.com podcast. I am your host, Louis Sung, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Chad Ronenbaum, and of course, somebody who's quickly becoming a regular staple for this show, Max Himmelrich of the Deep End, Miami. And ladies and gentlemen, we are quickly going to discuss for about the next half hour or so. The Miami Dolphins have just introduced their new head coach, Adam Gase, to the public, and I liked what I heard from the press conference. Of course, not everybody was thrilled that Gase was hired to begin with. They wanted somebody experienced. They wanted Tom Coughlin. They wanted Mike Shanahan, somebody who's won a Super Bowl before. Even though I've been reminded several times over the course of this week-long coaching search that no head coach has ever won a Super Bowl in two places. So I mean, like it's the situation where nobody's ever happy, I guess. But I guess that's what we have to live with. But regardless of that fact, Adam Gase is the new head coach, and just speaking from what I heard from the press conference, I heard a lot of things that I really enjoyed. I liked what he said. I liked his demeanor. He's kind of, if I had to give some kind of a kind of comparison, just personality wise, not coaching acumen, just personality. He's somewhere in the middle of a Joe Philbin and a Dan Campbell. You can tell he's passionate. You can tell he loves football, but you can tell that he has a little more of a cerebral kind of approach to it than say Campbell does. So he's a little more Joe Philbin like in that aspect. So he's kind of like, I would say he's somewhere along the lines of he takes the best of what Philbin had and the best of what Campbell had and mixes it all into one individual. So I don't know if that makes people happy or not, but that's just the way that I viewed it. And things that he said, such along the lines of he was going to be the one calling plays. He enjoys calling plays. He liked the chess match of going between two opposing coaches. He didn't. He does. He enjoys calling plays. He knows how to call plays. Peyton Manning has said that. I just read a report a little while ago that Peyton Manning had wanted Adam Gase to be the offensive coordinator back in 2013. So people have been pushing for him to become the guy calling plays for quite a while now. It's not just all of a sudden, oh, well, here's this guy because he just so happens to be the next in line. No, even Peyton Manning, possibly the most cerebral quarterback in the NFL, was saying that he wants Adam Gase to be his offensive coordinator. That's a big, big, big kudos to him because I know we can say stuff about, oh well, Aaron Rodgers like Joe Philbin. Aaron Rodgers is more physically gifted than Peyton. Peyton wins with his brain, and for the computer that Peyton Manning is to be impressed with someone like Gase, that's a much bigger feather on your cap than for Aaron Rodgers to say, "Oh well, I like Joe Philbin." That doesn't say anything. Peyton Manning didn't say, "Oh, I like Adam Gase." He said that he's very smart. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to innovate. He's the one who was calling plays. I switched out every once in a while, but most of the time it was Gase's calling plays. And then of course the biggest one that I took away was that Adam Gase said he is going to build his offensive scheme around the players. Chad, Max, finally, a coach who is not going to put the square peg in the round hole. Somebody who's going to look at the round hole and put the round player in there. Finally, somebody who's going to put together a scheme that fits the talent that the Miami Dolphins have at their disposal, not try to fit the talent the Miami Dolphins have at their disposal into their scheme. I mean, has like I kept making jokes about it. The football Jesus is not going to descend upon us anytime soon, but I have to ask the question, ladies and gentlemen, has football Jesus finally descended upon the Miami Dolphins?
I don't know
Mm.
about that, Lewis, but I mean, I think it's been pretty well universal. I mean, I've been complaining about it for a few years now, and I've just been getting more and more vocal that I'm so tired of coaches that get so set on their system. It's their system that succeeds, and it never is a system that succeeds. It's always the players out there on the field that succeed, and I really hope that rings true that he's able to use what we have, not just because in general, I think that's how you are a long-term successful coach is being able to put your players in positions to utilize their talents. But also coming into this year, it's going to be interesting, but I really feel like this team needs to use a lot of its resources to invest into the defense. I don't think we need to bring in a ton of new offensive personnel. And so considering our offense was so sluggish this year, I'm really hoping that Gase is able to do exactly that. Take the players that we have, take Devontae Parker, take Jarvis Landry, take Ryan Tannehill, and put those guys in positions to succeed rather than having to just blow everything up and start over.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that Gase has an interesting concept of what talent to prioritize. He didn't go in and just come in and say, "Oh, we're going to work this around Ryan Tannehill." Not what he said. He came in. He said he hasn't seen much film on Tannehill, which is true. He didn't have to play against him this year, so he probably hasn't watched any film on him. He knows that he has to do some evaluation, and he didn't make any promises. I see it very likely that he does work around Tannehill because if you're as brilliant of a football mind as Adam Gase is, whether it translates to head coaching success or not, you can make that position successful. It's what he's done. We've seen a drop-off from Peyton Manning this year, and yes, it's partially health-related, but Adam Gase left, which is a huge factor. And it's very, very difficult to understate what kind of impact they had. And my personal theory, this is pure speculation, I don't think it was just that Manning wanted Adam Gase as the offensive coordinator in 2013. I think Peyton Manning wanted Adam Gase to become the head coach in Denver when John Fox left. I would not be surprised at all by that. He was a hot candidate that year. We got lucky that the San Francisco 49ers had their coaching search implode last season because Adam Gase wanted to bring in his own coordinators, and Jed York and the GM over there, Trent Baalke, said no. So the Dolphins did get lucky, and I agree with Stephen Ross's mentality. If we sat here and waited for Hugh Jackson and, the Bengals went to the AFC Championship game and lost in Foxborough or whatever, then we'd be at the point where all the good candidates were gone and we are banking on Hugh Jackson or bust. And all from the beginning, Adam Gase was the guy, and they went and got their guy.
And just that in itself is something that it's something of a new thing for the Miami Dolphins. I mean,
Exactly.
just thinking back, just one coach away, just Joe Philbin before that. Joe Philbin was not their first choice. He wasn't their guy. The Dolphins wanted somewhere on they wanted Jeff Fisher, or they wanted like Mike McCoy, or they wanted I don't know who else they wanted, but Joe Philbin was not their first choice. I mean, they came up with the whole idea of, well, Joe Philbin was the most organized coach they'd ever met. I mean, yeah, but that's fine, but he wasn't who you wanted to begin with. You wanted Jeff Fisher, and he decided to spurn you and went to St. Louis, which may soon become Los Angeles, but I digress. In any case, now the Dolphins finally, they had a mission. They wanted this guy, and they went and they got their guy. Adam Gase was their guy from the beginning. They went and got him. And regardless of what other people wanted, like they wanted to wait and see what happened in the playoffs, which coaches got fired, like someone like Marvin Lewis, who he's been to the playoffs the last 5 years in a row. I mean, good for him. Do you see the talent they have on that team for the last 5 years? And again, I digress. And then you have other coaches. You see Tom Coughlin got fired by the Giants. He's a future Hall of Famer, no doubt. You see Mike Shanahan. You saw Mike Smith being interviewed by Miami. And I heard, and somebody tweeted me just a few minutes ago, well, why isn't anybody looking at Mike Shula? Well, I can't give you a good answer for that. I really don't. But no, the fact of the matter is, nobody's really been beating down the door for Mike Shula, and I don't want to hear anything about how, well, the Panthers are in the playoffs. So the Bengals are in the playoffs, but everybody's beating down the door for Hugh Jackson. So so what's the difference with him? Some people apparently are seeing something in Mike Shula that they don't like, and they're not trusting him to become a new head coach for anybody. So that in itself should raise some red flags. We've been saying for a while that we don't think Mike Shula is necessarily head coaching material, and I mean, just this in itself is enough proof to say, well, look, who do you see wanting him? I think there was maybe like one team who has even shown interest in him. Meanwhile, every team and their probably, if they had minor league teams, they would probably be wanting him too. Hugh Jackson has been getting attention from all across the NFL. What has Mike Shula gotten? One call? That's not a good sign.
With Mike Shula, it's complicated. This Panthers team has so much talent, but I'm a believer in Mike Shula. I think he did a great job of helping develop that talent. I mean, who was Josh Norman before this year? You know, you have two guys, Josh Norman and Kawan Short, who are playing some of the best football across the league at their position. So, I mean, we don't, as Dolphins fans, get a chance to watch them a ton. To anyone listening, I highly recommend you watch this team whenever they're playing in the playoffs and really look at the scheme that they're using on defense to maximize this talent. I'm a huge fan of Mike Shula, but I also am not a fan of bringing in a coordinator after one good year. You know, with Adam Gase, his first year in Denver, he obviously had an outstanding offense. The next year in Denver was the year that they set every record. I mean, Peyton Manning had arguably the greatest season of any quarterback in NFL history. Then he goes to Chicago, and while the numbers don't reflect it, I spoke with a couple of Bears fans this morning. The difference was night and day in Jay Cutler's performance. I mean, we've all seen it. You look at Tannehill's stat line, and you'd think he improved this year. But really, he stayed pretty stagnant, and then the offensive line play degraded, you know, his performance. But outside of that, you can't go purely based off of the numbers. And Jay Cutler's performance did improve, and he's had 3 solid years as an offensive coordinator, 3 good years, and that's enough to warrant him attention. And also the other thing with Mike Shula, going back to that, I just had to double check my facts. Ron Rivera is a defensive coach. That's always been that's where he was before he became the head coach in Carolina. So it's kind of a question of how much of a role. It's the same question people ask about Matt Patricia. You know, is the coordinator as important when the head coach is rooted in that side of the ball?
You guys hear me okay?
We hear you, Chad.
Oh, no.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I was going to touch on some of the other coordinators and coaches and stuff. And I think one of the most telling things was nobody else has really moved yet. And it just following the coaching search the last week or so, it kind of appears to me on the surface anyway, you never really know what's being discussed, you know, behind the closed doors in those meeting rooms. But it does appear to me that Gase and Hugh Jackson are the 2 lead candidates for most teams. I really believe that's the case. I also still strongly believe that Sean Payton was a strong candidate, but you know, that door closed when he decided to stay in New Orleans. But you know, if all these guys were such hot candidates, I don't think teams would be sitting still. There's a lot of job openings right now out there, and I'm pretty confident that Gase is pretty high up on multiple teams' lists. I can't say he's their number 1 prospect, but I think it's pretty
He was
clear.
definitively the number one in Cleveland. He was. I mean, in Philly. In Philadelphia.
I think Cleveland and Philly had him pretty high up, and I like I said, we're never going to know if he was their number 1 because nobody's going to say that now because you just look foolish that you didn't get him. But I do believe he was ranked pretty high, so I don't believe whatsoever that this is a hiring just out of left field, that Miami is just grabbing somebody that on a whim because of a good year with Peyton Manning. There's clearly enough substance there that there were teams chasing Gase. And I do believe that's the same scenario for Hugh Jackson. And I mentioned this, and people kind of shunned me away, but I'm kind of wondering if there's going to be a Tampa Bay-like scenario in Cincinnati. I mean, depending on what happens in the playoffs, but I just made the point, if the Bengals just get blown out in the playoffs, I mean, it's been a lot of years now where the Bengals have just been this fringe team that have not really been close to competing for a Super Bowl. And, you know, at what point are the Bengals going to make that next jump? And it gets tough when you get a hot coordinator. It's exactly what happened in Tampa. I don't think Tampa wanted to fire Lovie Smith, but they didn't want to lose their offensive coordinator. And so I'm not 100% sure that that Cincinnati won't let Marvin Lewis go to keep Hugh Jackson. It might sound crazy, but I think for Miami to wait till Sunday and roll the dice and try to go get Hugh Jackson, I just don't think there were any guarantees there. Obviously, Hugh Jackson's not really going to be that talkative because he's got to focus on the game. And if, let's say, Miami has Gase number 1 or 2 or whatever on their board on coaches they wanted to hire, I completely understand them pulling the trigger and going and get him now. You know, other than Hugh Jackson, yeah, I obviously was pro Mike Shula too, just because I think it would be a special job for him in Miami because of his dad and all the support he would get from both fan base and the organization and all that. But to me, Mike Shula wasn't a stronger candidate than Mike Gase or Adam Gase. I think it was a good hire in that regard. Um, and the other candidates that Miami interviewed, it isn't like you're seeing a bunch of teams coming in after them either. So I do feel like they got one of the top candidates available. And this, in response to the prior search, this was such a different pool. There's more openings available, and it just, in my opinion, there's so many more higher coaches available than the last time Miami did this when they had to settle for Philbin. I do feel pretty strongly they offered that job to Fisher, and they couldn't get Fisher to come here. I think primarily because of the way Ireland is, or was, I should say, with personnel control. But I don't think if you threw those candidates in the pool out there right now, if you threw, Joe Philbin back when he was with Green Bay into that pool along with Jeff Fisher, I don't think those guys would be near up on the boards relative to like the Gases, the Hugh Jacksons, the Mike Shanahans, and coaches like that are out there right now.
And
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead, Max.
It's clear that Miami wanted to make a splash, but someone pointed it out online this morning. The Dolphins fans are kind of divided between these two factions that have been formed by the media. We don't have truly competent media like most teams do. We don't have a guy other than Barry Jackson like John McClain with Houston. Someone who's been around forever, well-respected, knows what he's doing. We have some young journalists, but the thing is, we have these personalities that have made their money off of website clicks and off of radio hits. So you have people like Big O and Omar who do their thing, and then you have some people who are more rational about it, and the fans are divided upon that group. So there are a lot of people who say, "Oh, they didn't get Mike Shanahan, they didn't get Hugh Jackson." Well, what is the basis for being upset over getting Adam Gase? I understand. I would have preferred Hugh Jackson. I'm not saying Adam Gase is my first choice, but by no means can you be upset about the Miami Dolphins getting Adam Gase as their head coach. It's not like when we had to settle for Joe Philbin a few years ago, and we all kind of said, "Oh, well, I guess we're going to let this guy do this." Adam Gase is the first head coach hired. He was in demand, and Miami wanted their guy. And I respect that because the level of dysfunction in Miami previously prevented them from making a coherent decision and going out and getting their guy. Having one person or a group of people say, "We agree on this, let's go get him." And they finally did. They decided, let's go get our guy. And they did.
Yeah, and they did. And the point I was making along with that you were kind of mentioning there, Max, was I was making the point, yeah, I completely can understand somebody saying my number one's Hugh Jackson, because I had Hugh Jackson as my number one candidate. I probably had Gase around 3, but my point being is you have no idea. I threw out the scenario: what if Cincinnati decides to fire Marvin Lewis and make Hugh their head coach? And then the other point is you don't want to go under the assumption that Hugh wants the Miami job. Maybe Hugh wants the San Francisco job for whatever. Maybe he wants the New York Giants job or the
He's a California guy. He's a California guy. You got to start it.
Yeah, you just don't know how interested he's going to be. And so let's say you decide to wait and go after Hugh Jackson. Well, there's people chasing Gase right now, and I would say pretty confidently if Miami doesn't go get that deal done, he probably ends up taking a deal in Philadelphia or somewhere else. And so I think it was one of those things where you got to make that choice because you don't want to be – there's going to be a team here coming into this run that are going to be left empty-handed, so to speak, on who they have on their list. You're not going to be told that in the local media or publicly, but behind closed doors, everybody has their list of who they want. And I'd read this morning that the Lions were really considering letting Caldwell go, and so that'll be another team, entering into the mix. It's going to be after a head coach.
If they let Caldwell go, Terrell Austin would be one of the all-time great defensive coordinator hires. That would be an amazing situation for Miami if they were to decide to let Jim Caldwell go, and Miami had a shot at Terrell Austin.
Oh yeah, of course. But my point being is. I think a lot of people are looking at the number of teams in the chase right now for coaches, and Gase absolutely is a hot name candidate right now. So I can't fault them for locking him down and getting them when they did. I understand the flip side of it. He is 37. I'm already a little bit concerned that the wide grab he's got. Obviously he's going to have a lot of more say in personnel, I think, than people were expecting. He's going to be calling the plays. And so at 37 and never have been a head coach, he is taking on immediately a ton onto his plate that he's going to have to handle. And so I'm a little worried he's going to put himself in over his head, and he's inexperienced. That's the flip side of it. Is it's a high risk, high reward move. If it works out, maybe you have the next Sean Payton, the next Mike Tomlin, even the next Bill Belichick. You don't know. You're getting an unknown commodity that I have no doubt he will come in and immediately improve the play calling, because honestly, I have no coaching experience, and I could have probably come in and improved the play calling
So
over what happened
I
this year.
don't doubt it.
So he will obviously do that, but will he be able to field a balanced 53-man team? How will our defense be? How is he going to do when it's a snowy game in December and a must-win game when he's got to outcoach Bill Belichick with Tom Brady and those types of scenarios? So
Well, we have
I
to
don't
get
know
to
that.
those scenarios first.
Yeah, that's So I don't. It's a high risk work. So you're hoping you're getting an elite coach rather than settling for what I would probably say could be a good coach. If you would have brought in Mike Shanahan, you kind of have a known quantity. He's probably not going to come in and be a coach that people are going to say he's one of the best coaches ever. He's so innovative. He's going to do all these things that outcoach other coaches. But you also know he's going to come in, put in a sound structure, a sound organization, and probably do a quality job. And so that's the trade-off. Do you take that coach that maybe doesn't have a super high ceiling, but you also know he knows how to coach and he's got some stability attached to him? Or you just roll the dice? And it wouldn't shock me at all if in 2 years Adam Gase and Mike Tannenbaum are gone, and it wouldn't shock me at all if Gase ended up being a really good coach. That's the choice you got to take as an owner. Are you going all in, and are you trying to get a stud coach, or are you trying to bring stability back? And that's why you're seeing this polarizing effect from the fan base and Twitter base, because a lot of people they've been through some brutal years, with the coaches we've had in here and the personnel decisions we've had in here. And I mean, let's face it, Miami has not been a significant team for decades, in terms of the discussion in the NFL about good teams. And so I think people are a little nervous because they don't want another 2 years of just going nowhere but down. So I'm kind of in the middle on it. I definitely don't fault them for pulling the trigger, and I think it's foolish to say they should have waited to interview the teams in the playoffs, because everything I've heard is that the New England coordinators weren't that excited to come to Miami. I have been hearing that on the rumor mill. And so I don't know if they could have
Why would
landed
you
those.
leave? Why would you leave? Why would you leave Foxborough? I mean, why
Well,
would
that,
you leave?
and I mean, again, my point out is you got to keep in mind how many teams are in the mix right now that need coaches. And so it doesn't matter because you have an opening. You can't assume that Miami can just hire whoever they want. It comes down to who those guys want to go to. And, you get Gase, you're getting one of the top people that people were chasing, one of the top coaches. And it was just one of the things where just lock him down, because what we didn't want to do is, and people can differ with me in my regard. I didn't want to see Gase go, Hugh Jackson go, and then suddenly we're having to go with somebody like maybe Mike Smith or somebody, just because we're down to our third or fourth candidate because we missed out on all the.
Matthew Canada is about to call in and go to school on you. I'm sure. You're talking
Yeah,
bad about
I
Mike
know.
Smith.
He's got a dinner thing, so he's not going to join us today, unfortunately.
My point being, though, just like when you're in the draft, I'm a fan of not messing around. Let's say you like a player that you really like in the draft. I'm not a big fan of saying, well, I think we could get him if we drop 3 or 4 more spots back and we can take him there and pick him an extra pick. Yeah, I'm more like you. If this is the guy you want that you think's going to be playing on your team and the guy you want, you get him when you get that opportunity. You don't mess around with it. And if Gase was the number one guy on Miami's board, that's what I would expect them to do. That's what I would want my owner to do and my GM to do. Is I want them to get the guy that's high on their list. I don't want them to miss out on that opportunity.
I think it's
Yeah, and I think it's a good commitment to long-term improvement for Miami. If they wanted to win now, they wouldn't have necessarily gone with Gase. I personally think it'll take a while for him to really get the hang of it.
and Ross said as
But
much.
what I hope is that we give him a long leash and let him make his own mistakes, let him create his own success, and be the one who helps get the team back on top. Because regardless of the result, I love the patience that Dallas has showed with Jason Garrett. I mean, in Tom Landry's first year with the Cowboys, he didn't win a game. He followed that up with 3 straight seasons under 5 wins. Became one of the greatest coaches in NFL history. You can't do what teams started doing now where the Twitter GMs take over and people get fired 2 years in. You look at the Cleveland Browns. What's going on there? I mean, we might have waited a year too long to fire Joe Philbin, but at least we didn't do it after his second season. We gave him time. And that's what I think they'll do with Adam Gase. I don't think there's any reason for that to change. But the one biggest problem with Philbin, I saw, was his unwillingness to make changes to help the team improve. He didn't want to fire. He didn't want to fire people. I think Adam Gase is the guy who's going to come in. He knows he has to do whatever it takes to get his team to win. It's his team. It's not his coordinator's team. It is his football team. And he is going to do whatever he has to do, fire whoever he has to fire, cut whoever he has to cut, and do whatever he has to do to make this a great football team. And I think that's going to be the biggest difference we see. A lot of people compare them because, they're kind of quiet guys who happen to both coach great quarterbacks. But there's no comparison between the two.
For one thing,
all know.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Adam Gase is an actual offensive coordinator. Like we've seen it. We've seen him do things. We've seen him fix Jay Cutler, all this other stuff. It's not like the only person he's ever worked with Peyton Manning. I mean, hello, he helped the Broncos get to a playoff game with Tim Tebow, for God's sakes. I mean, you have to be pretty darn good to get Tebow to be good enough to win a playoff game. Like let's give the man props. I don't think Joe Philbin could have done that.
No, I don't. Well, I mean, Joe Philbin couldn't get Ryan Tannehill to play. So
Joe Philbin couldn't get Tannehill to the playoffs, period.
Right, exactly. I mean, Joe Philbin. Oh my God. But we're at a point where this direction is going to be very interesting because I really think they're going to give Adam Gase the ability to say, hey, you can do whatever you want with this roster and let us make the moves. Tell us what you want. And I think that's one of the reasons they went with a younger coach, because it's more of a collaborative effort. If Mike Shanahan came in, he'd say, okay, this is what I want to do, and I'm not changing. Adam Gase is going to listen, and it's going to be a collaborative effort. And that's consistent with what Stephen Ross has said throughout the whole process. He wants a collaborative effort.
It speaks volumes to me that, I mean, let's be honest, guys, and we know this is true. It seems that the only people, nowhere else around the league have we seen such a hatred for a new guy. And not only that, literally the only people who didn't want Adam Gase are Dolphins fans. Eagles fans were drooling over the idea of Gase coming in to coach their football team. Bears fans were screaming at the top of their lungs, no, don't let him go. Are you out of your mind? And yet here we are, Dolphins fans, raging and complaining, Adam Gase not going to do no. Hello? You are the only ones. National media have been saying it. Local media have been saying it. Fans from around the league have been saying it. The Dolphins just hit a home run. What reason? It's not like this is not a league-wide conspiracy saying, oh, well, let's just screw with the Dolphins and say, well, they did a great job, even though they didn't. I mean, come on, people. Their job, not every journalist in the world is crooked. A lot of people are being honest about this. Like, you see Benjamin Albright. I asked him the other day, did the Dolphins make a good move? He said a very good move. Jeff Darlington, he seems to like the idea as well. You see Eagles fans, Bears fans, Eagles journalists, Bears journalists, they're all saying, man, the Dolphins really hit a home run this time. Why are Dolphins fans saying the opposite? Are they really like? I hate to make it sound like I'm calling these people out, but I've been having to do this a lot the past few weeks. Is everyone so blind to what everybody else is seeing because our aqua colored glasses don't allow us to see what everybody else is seeing. I understand Adam Gase, not experienced. He was an offensive coordinator first, worked with Peyton Manning. That's some of the biggest reasons why everybody likes him. But just look at the workload that he's had put upon him. He is night and day compared to Joe Philbin. And people who saying he's quiet, I mean, I didn't see that much passion from Joe Philbin's press conferences. I didn't see that much. Did he yell and scream and holler like Dan Campbell? Nope. But you could tell this man has emotions. You can tell this guy has some kind of a pulse. He's not a zombie like Joe Philbin is. He knows what he's doing. He has a plan. He's going to call his own plays. You know he can call plays. And the fact that you see Peyton Manning, not only Peyton Manning saying, oh, I really like this guy, he really helps out the team a lot, but you see Cutler. Jay Cutler, everybody. Do you remember who Jay Cutler is? He's the guy who screamed and yelled in the locker room last year, got in a fight with his best friend, Brandon Marshall or whatever. People make fun of him for like not caring, or he always had like a cigarette in his mouth whenever he has those memes on him. And he came and said, look what this man has done for me. I really appreciate what he's done for me. Jay Cutler, ladies and gentlemen, is not somebody that you would think, oh, well, he's just a really good quarterback. People were in Chicago wanted Cutler run out of town up until Gase showed up and fixed him. So that's a terrible argument if you want to say, well, Adam Gase is Joe Philbin. Really? You think Joe Philbin can fix Jay Cutler? I don't think he could.
Well, more importantly,
tell us
Lewis,
how you really feel, Lewis.
Well, that's what it is, guys. I really have had it. I'm over 6 feet tall. I've had it up to 8 feet with these people. Like
you're 8 feet tall, Lewis.
No. Okay, whatever. If I could be, I'd just step on all the people who think they're so smart, saying that, oh, Adam Gase is so wrong. Like, why? Because he was the same position as Joe Philbin?
Because it's just we can't go off of the opinion of these people who don't trust the football acumen of someone like Mike Tannenbaum. He might make some questionable decisions. Yeah, he extended Mark Sanchez, but he also drafted Darrelle Revis and that defensive line
and his offense and their offensive line.
And their offense, right. He knows football. Stephen Ross went out and finally found someone he really trusted. You know, he found someone with true football knowledge and said, run my football team. He said, I'm a real estate guy. I don't know about football. That's not my thing. But it's your thing, so go out and do it. And what did he do? He said, I want Adam Gase. He wanted a young coach. That was what was reported from the start. He went out and he got a young coach.
Well, it was reported. Well, Max, it was reported first that Tannenbaum's first choice would have been Doug Marrone, but eventually the committee convinced him, well, yeah, I guess Adam Gase would be a really good idea. Let's go get him. So, just to clarify.
The committee was unanimous by the end, based on what we heard.
Yes. By the end, it was unanimous.
Right. So I'm not sure what to make. I said going in, there are very few candidates I would have been actively unhappy about. Doug Marrone was one of them. Terrell Austin was another. And the last was Eric Mangini, who got eliminated from conversation pretty early.
Mangini was never in the conversation to begin with.
Right. He got eliminated.
Mangini was in the conversation because fans are paranoid.
Right. I would have been against those three guys, not because Terrell Austin's a bad coach, just because I think he needs more time and more experience, and not because Doug Marrone's a bad coach. I just highly question what his motivations are after he left Buffalo. That was a very concerning move for me after he helped improve that team. And everyone really felt betrayed. You know, like it wasn't like he was disliked in that locker room. I mean, we remember that saga. It was really unfortunate. And that's why I was really against Marrone as a candidate. But moving forward, I think after a little while, when the dust of the season settles, people will finally realize, okay, we have a guy we can work with here.
It's going to depend on what he decides to do for personnel moves. It's going to decide. It's going to depend on what he decides to do for an offense. I mean, we'll be hearing more of it, I'm sure. And as soon as training camp comes around back in the summer, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to watch like I did the past couple of years, and I'm going to see, okay, what's changed. Like, we still have to get a staff together. We thought that Vance Joseph was already confirmed, but then Rappaport came back out and said, "Oops, I said it wrong. What I meant to say was they're going to be targeting him." So there's no guarantee. I'm hoping that this is still the case because, I mean, Vance Joseph does bring some familiarity. He knows how to do a 4-3 for the past 2 years. He's done it, and then he has like 8 years of experience in the 3-4. So he can actually put together a scheme that fits a little bit of everything. And if not Vance Joseph, well, there's always the opportunity to get Vic Fangio out of Chicago, and many people consider him to be one of the best defensive coordinators in all of football. And if this is the case, then I'm like, okay, I can work with this. The Ndamukong Suh is a 5 tech. That would be very intriguing. I mean, you see, moving Suh around, making him line up elsewhere every once in a while, that has worked. Like, if you just look back on previous games, you see Ndamukong Suh lining up at defensive end, and the right tackle is suddenly thinking, why is this man lined up against me? And then he proceeds to get smushed into the ground. So this kind of thing, like creative defenses, make something happen. Do not oversimplify it. Like, this was the biggest problem. Everybody wanted it was first it was too complicated, and then everybody said it was too simple. So it really all that sounds like to me is that the players just really didn't want their coaching staff there anymore. They didn't want Quell back. They didn't want Philbin back. They didn't want Laser back. They wanted everybody out. We want a new coaching staff. Well, now we'll see what happens with Adam Gase. We've heard elsewhere. We've heard that Dan Campbell might be retained in some capacity. Dan Campbell does have a connection with Adam Gase back in their days in Detroit. Campbell was actually still a player by that point, so they do have a connection. Campbell's not thrilled with he's actually very unhappy about the fact that he wasn't made the head coach. And I mean, I can understand that. I mean, obviously he thought, and I'm sure in the back of his mind he thinks, well, I'm a long shot, but every guy, men have egos, ladies and gentlemen. We feel like we feel like that we can get spurned, we can get passed over, even though we feel like we did a good enough job to earn our spots. So we need some time to cool off, and that's what the Dolphins are going to give him. They're going to wait a couple of days before they contact him, see if maybe he wants to stick around. I would assume. I mean, Campbell has potential, and Campbell was a really good tight end coach when he was here. So if he returns to do that again, I don't see a problem with it. I can't see Dan Campbell being so. He's not that much of an ego case that he's going to try and stage a coup in the Dolphins locker room. I mean, I've met the guy, Chad. Well, no, I forget. Sorry, Chad, you weren't with us. I keep forgetting. It feels like you were there in my mind. It's like you were there in Web Weekend, even though you weren't there.
I was there in spirit. Lewis.
You were there in spirit. That's why I felt like you're here, because you're like your little force ghost was there next to me, watching everything that was going on. But sorry, that was a Star Wars reference. I don't want to spoil anything. But anyway, I mean, Dan Campbell's a really nice guy. I can't imagine he's going to try and make any trouble. Maybe he stays on. Maybe he helps Adam Gase get to know these players that's already here. The players still want Campbell around. I have no doubt of that. And I can't imagine that Campbell would try to sneak around behind Gase's back and say, guys, do it this way instead. It's like, no. That doesn't sound like Dan Campbell. That's something sneaky. Dan Campbell doesn't do sneaky, from what I can tell. He's not looking to screw anyone over. He's not looking to make enemies. And I understand. I definitely understand the point that some people want to make. They want to say, well, we need to make a complete clean sweep in the coaching staff. I understand that idea. I understand that process. You don't want to have any lingering allegiances. You want everybody to be like, okay, this is our new guy. There's nobody left over from the previous regime to say, well, maybe this guy would have been a better leader. I understand that, but I don't see Dan Campbell as the type to cause problems. In fact, I see Dan Campbell, after he's got some time to cool down, as somebody to say, hey, look, guys, I'm still here. I'm still coaching you guys, but Gase is our leader now, and we're going to follow him, and we're going to make sure that we win games with him. And if the players really respect Dan Campbell, then they will go with that.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I've been seeing a report today that he wasn't disappointed. He was upset. He had to differentiate it. So he's mad, and
he's
I understand that because Dan Campbell he came into a situation where he had very little chance of success because none of these guys are his guys, and he never even had an off season to prepare it. So I do get that, but you also have to I think understand a little bit of the reality is if Dan Campbell throws his name in with all the other coaching candidates out there, I think it's unlikely anybody's going to hire him as a head coach. And so for Dan Campbell's career, he needs to continue to get some decent level coaching positions and continue to to work at it. So I thought there's that.
Chad, never doubt the Cleveland Browns.
You never what?
Yeah, never doubt the Cleveland Browns.
Never doubt the Cleveland Browns.
They could end up at a point of desperation. No one wants to go there. They hired the guy from Moneyball.
Yeah, I think the Browns will get one of these. Well, probably one of the guys you've seen cycle through.
Jimmy Haslam doesn't even know what kind of sports team he is. I mean, he's hired a lawyer and the guy from Moneyball. It's like a punchline to a walk into a bar joke. I mean,
the Cleveland's been a mess for quite a while.
We can all root for Joe Philbin because he was a nice guy. He was a good person. But we just didn't want him as our coach. I think he's going to get another shot. I mean,
Green Bay.
think if he does, I think Green Bay will take him back this offseason. I mean, who knows what happens there? Because he obviously did a good job there. He didn't have an overbearing amount of responsibility like he did in Miami. He just kind of worked there, oversaw general things, and did his job. He just went through the motions. It was fine. But
yeah,
I think
it's about what you bring to the table.
Looks.
I don't believe. What'd you say, Max?
I think Dan Campbell could get looks for the team when you get late in the process. Because
it's possible.
As a what? Not as a head coach.
As a higher position than Miami will offer him. He's going to take whatever gives him the best title, I think. Unless it's not a major difference between, if I think Adam Gase would be well served by offering him the assistant head coaching position. And then bringing in offensive, defensive, and special teams coaches.
Unfortunately, Max, I just don't see it with Campbell right now, just because I don't know what he would be qualified to do. I mean, he clearly isn't, in my opinion, he's not a offensive or defensive coordinator ready coach. And he kind of showed that, with Miami, he didn't come in and start doing a bunch of innovative things to get their offense revved up. He just kind of turned it over to another guy. He wasn't the one out there trying to call plays and fix things. So I don't see Dan Campbell being quickly hired as somebody's offensive coordinator. He is a very good motivator. And the best thing he could possibly do would be try to be like an assistant head coach, because I do think you can be a good head coach without having to be a coordinator. But I don't think Campbell's offering that right now. So I don't think he's going to get hired as an offensive or defensive coordinator or a head coach position, right away out of the gate. But I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility for him. And, I was throwing out the idea, a few days ago that he would be a good fit with Tom Coughlin or Mike Shanahan kind of as their right-handed person to be the assistant head coach to learn under them. That would be an ideal scenario for him. I don't know that if he was upset today, and clearly Gase is young or not, he's clearly coming in to run his show. And I mean, that was apparent after the press conference. He's the one who is going to be running things on a pretty wide scale. So I don't know that Dan Campbell will fit in with him or not. We'll have to wait and see what happens. But I don't know. I don't believe that. Here's an interesting stat. I'm pretty sure I'm right about it. I don't think anybody has ever coached the Dolphins that went on to head coach another team. Have they? Another professional team.
Todd Bowles.
And I meant it was the head coach. I guess you could call him as an interim head coach, right? Yeah. So I was going from the start, but my point being is I don't think that Philbin or Campbell are going to get any head coaching jobs anytime soon. Philbin, I don't think Philbin will ever get a head coaching job again, simply because he didn't appear to be able to keep control of the organization and his team. With the bully gate and the Mike Wallace, he seemed to consistently have trouble with maintaining control. And two, what still blows my mind is Joe Philbin never was a guy that called plays. He didn't call the plays in Green Bay, and so he never called the plays here in Miami, as far as I know. And so that always surprised me with Joe Philbin. And, that's probably part of the reason why our offense ended up struggling, because we didn't have a leader that could take over that if it was failing. So at least with Gase, we'll get that. But anyway, in summary, I'm kind of going off on a tangent there. I really don't believe that Dan Campbell is going to get a head coaching offer anywhere else. And I'm hoping that if he's upset, that he kind of can, take a few days, get over it, and work something out with an organization. Because I do believe he would be a very valuable asset to the team and to Gase. He already knows all the players. He's been in the organization for 6 years. I would love for them to find a place for him, but I don't know after being a head coach what Dan Campbell's next move is going to be.
Yeah, well, we'll see how it goes. Ultimately, it's Adam Gase's decision to make. Stephen Ross said as such. Nobody's making any predictions. Everybody's saying it's going to take some time for the team to grow and find a way to get some wins going. It's going to take time. He's there. Essentially, it's a plea. Everybody, please be patient. I hope Dolphins fans can find some aspect of patience left in their hearts to at least give Adam Gase a couple of years before wanting to hate this guy. Let's be honest, everybody. We don't know what Gase is going to do. We wouldn't have known what Tom Coughlin would have been able to do down here. We don't know what Mike Shanahan would have been able to do. We don't know what Mike Shula would have been able to do. We don't know what Sean Payton would have been able to do. It's all a big crapshoot until the bullets start firing. And right now, and I'll say this again because I've been saying it for many times, Adam Gase was not my first choice. He wasn't my second choice. I would have rather had somebody like Hugh Jackson or Mike Shanahan. But we have Adam Gase. Adam Gase was their guy from the beginning. They wanted him. They pushed for him. They beat out the Eagles for him. They got him. And so their top choice from the whole get-go is now the Miami Dolphins head coach. They didn't waste time. They put a full court press on the one guy that they figured was the best shot at making a run for a playoff, Super Bowls, whatever you want to call it. They've been doing this research ever since Philbin was fired. They've had more than enough time to look around. Mike Tannenbaum said they originally had a list of 25 coaches that could potentially take over, which included, of course, college coaches, pro coaches, former Hall of Fame coaches, or whatever kind of coach you wanted. There was at least 25 people on that list. They narrowed it down to 6 and 7. Those are the people they interviewed, and in the end, it turned out to be Adam Gase. So they didn't waste time. They said, Adam Gase is our guy. Let's go get him. They got him. That's already a big improvement. Gase said he wants to build the offense around the players he has, which is already a complete 180 of whatever we've been having for the past however many years. How many years have Philbin been here? 4 years? 4 years Philbin was here, or do I count 3.5? Whatever. So Philbin tried to make his scheme, and Lasers tried to make his scheme fit the players that were already there. Instead, Gase is going to make his scheme based on what players are there. It's not a matter of square peg, round hole. Gase is going to look at what kind of pegs he has and then build the holes around them. So, if that makes any sense at all, I hope everybody understands what I'm trying to say here, because my voice is tired and we've already been going on longer than I had hoped. So,
that was beautiful. That was very poetic.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I try my best. So anyway, that's going to be it for this Adam Gase press conference reactionary episode. It'll be up on the website very soon. It'll be up on SoundCloud, and we will have, ladies and gentlemen, a proper show on Tuesday night. So I'm hoping that we'll have more to talk about. We'll learn a little bit more about what's going on. Maybe more news about what we can expect from Dan Campbell. Maybe some more statements from Adam Gase. Some more indications of what exactly is going to happen with the roster. We don't know yet. We're going to hopefully
maybe some staff ideas.
Yeah, hopefully some ideas of who exactly is going to be on the staff. So we'll have more to talk about on Tuesday, and of course you can always ladies and gentlemen, you can always call in the show if you want to on Tuesday nights. Usually it's around 8, but it varies depending on our schedules. We have very busy people, don't you know? In any case, I want to thank you all for joining us for this quick show. We'll be back live Tuesday night, and I'm gonna wish you all a fantastic night and take care.